On today's show, we're going to talk about the Dolly AC camera operator triangle, Pearl Harbor the movie, the opening shot from the birdcage, keeping your mouth shut and eyes open on set, and of course, John Wayne. Just a little bit of business before we start. There may be a curse word here or there in this episode, so please listen responsibly. Make sure to check out our website, theop.io, especially the breakdown where operators talk about everything that goes into the making of a shot, and read the musings for discussions about everything from quick tips to larger concepts behind operating. I may or may not take a couple of breaks during this episode, but I promise you none of them will be longer than 22 seconds. Finally, if you are enjoying the podcast, please follow us, like us, talk about us, and share us with your friends. So grab a beverage, sit back, and enjoy the op. Thanks for listening.
Lock it up, nice and quiet, and let's roll.
Rolling. Victor 30 Echo, take 2.
Hey, Mark. Hey, Mark.
And camera set. And action.
Hello and welcome back to the Op Podcast, the podcast where we talk about operating and the art of visual storytelling and everything that goes along with it. My name is Dave Comides and I'm your host. And we're here yet again from Panavision Woodland Hills, who have so nicely agreed to allow us to use their theater, because it sounds better than my daughter's bedroom. Today we have a really exciting guest, Alan Moose Shultz, who is a well-regarded Dolly Grip, or was, because he's retired now, in the film industry. Some of Moose's, not limited to, but some of his credits: Godzilla vs. Kong, Saving Mr. Banks, Seabiscuit, Mr. Deeds, Pearl Harbor, The Birdcage, seemingly most of the Star Trek movies, movie Dave. It just goes on and on. In 2015, Moose was given the Lifetime Achievement Award from the SOC for Motion Picture Camera Platform Operator. He's worked with a ton of our guests and is just well-regarded in the industry and definitely knows what he's doing. Moose, thank you for being here today.
Thanks for having me, Dave. I was looking forward to our conversation.
Yeah, no, this is great. You're actually you're the first Dolly Grip that we've had on the podcast, and obviously I've talked to a lot of operators. I've talked to some DPs. I've got some assistants coming up, but to me, the Dolly Grip was always you're part of the camera crew as far as I'm concerned.
Right. I kind of always viewed myself as more part of the camera crew than the grip crew because. We were Dolly Grips per se, or we're camera support and work hand in hand with the camera department. So, although we're technically grips, we're really more of involved with the camera department than the set lighting and all the other activities that go on the set. We're directly involved with camera movement, unless it's handheld or Steadicam or.
Well, even then though, but
right,
you're still
even
in the
then
dance,
we're there
right?
Even then we're there for support.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
We couldn't do it without having that support. So you're retired. How many years did you say you were in the business?
I started when I was 20 years old in 1973.
Wow, different business back then.
Well, no comparison. It was unrecognizable, really, especially the path to start working on production.
Just to get in?
To get in.
Was it basically still back then you had to know someone or be related to someone?
Yes. If you weren't born in the right bed, it could be difficult. But there was a group of grips that actually sued our local 80 because of the nepotism and the lack of diversity in their hiring practices. Yeah. And they won, and that kind of opened things up. And I was lucky enough to have a neighbor that was a grip, and I was 20 years old. I just was raised in Virginia, graduated from high school, went back to Virginia for a couple of years, came back, and my parents' neighbor, who was a friend, was a grip and recommended myself and my brother, wrote us a letter of recommendation, went down to the local, got all of our hand tools that they said you're supposed to have, and sat by the phone waiting for a call from the local to start.
So you didn't know it, but you had no idea what you were supposed to do, or
I was 20 years old, not a care in the world.
Wow.
I had no idea what I was getting into, what it was about, and turned out to be the break of lifetime.
Do you remember what the first thing you got called for was? Your first show?
Well, you never worked on production back then.
Yeah.
It was more of an apprentice program,
Oh,
really.
okay.
You started out as what they called a casual, and you paid a casual fee. You weren't in the union.
Oh.
Then you got your 30 days, and you became a number 3 card holder. So there was a tiered system where after a certain amount of days, you would move up, and then eventually you would become a number 1, which meant you were apprentice, which you had kind of gone through the apprenticeship program. And that program was really to give you a really strong background in set construction and hanging backings and what is considered now to be pre-rigging.
Yeah.
But in the 70s, as the major studios were kind of leaning more towards independent, and the LLCs were starting to come into play more. That was the way you got in. And I literally probably, I would say 5 or 6 years before I ever saw an actual movie set with cameras and all that. I mean, every now and then you would be on. They called them gangs. I worked the 2:30 to 11 shift at Universal, and you worked at all the different studios. MGM, Fox, Warner Brothers.
So you just got a call tomorrow. We need you at such and
right.
such.
Right, and you could get laid off one time.
Yeah.
One day, and then the next day you would be at a completely different studio.
And the local called and told you that, or the studios? Oh, they just said tomorrow report to and tomorrow report to.
The procedure was the department head, the grip department head would call the local and say, "I need 5 guys at 6 o'clock tomorrow morning."
Okay.
So and the list rotated, so they would start it and go down, and when you were in the rotation, you'd get a call from the local. Never did I get a call from a physical studio from the department head or whatever. That was pretty much standard practice to go through the union for hiring.
Yeah. Interesting.
And and occasionally, if you were out and about, and one instance, I was on a gang. My brother and I both. His name was Mark. Shultz. We were on a gang doing gang work at Warner Brothers, and they needed some people to go out, a couple of sandbags really, to go out and stand on reflectors.
A couple of sandbags. Really,
because that's, stand on the reflector, make sure it's aimed here.
Keep pointing it.
Yeah. And it was one of those things where it was John Wayne's last movie called The Shootist.
Really? Wow.
Right. And coincidentally, he dies of cancer in that movie, and at that point in his life, he was actually,
that's right.
He was suffering from that disease. It was kind of, that's the kind of, you kind of worked your way into production like that, a day here, a day there, and you hope you make a good impression on the key grip.
Yep.
And they go, "Oh, hey, yeah. I need an extra guy for this next week. We're going exterior. Can you send out? Can I get
so
loose?"
The key grip could ask for who they wanted.
Right.
Yeah.
When you got to the studio, then it became even more about who you knew.
We want this guy.
Right.
We want
this guy, or we want that guy.
But I guess that was probably good because you probably met a lot of people.
You meet a lot of people, and you've seen it. There's 1,000 ways to do the same thing.
Yep.
So it was great training because you got to see a lot of different ways that different DPs and guys did things.
Sure.
But at that point, you're so overwhelmed by, because you don't know what you're doing.
You just don't want to screw up.
You don't want to screw up. You don't want to mess up.
Yeah.
And you want to make a good impression. So you're minding your P's and Q's and really paying attention, which you should be anyway, but you're really trying to focus on making a good first impression and hoping that leads to something else.
Did you interact with John Wayne at all?
Interesting story. I had not this mustache that I have now, but I had a pretty big bushy mustache, and he walked up to me and made a comment about my mustache, and I'm like, oh my, it's like
John Wayne's talking.
John Wayne's talking to me. So out on the Western Street over at Warner Brothers.
Yeah.
I don't even know if they have it anymore.
I don't think they do, or it's something else. If it was, I don't know where it was.
They probably put up an office building or something. So, that was kind of one of those moments where you go, oh, golly, that's actually John Wayne.
Yeah. Did you talk to him, or were you just like starstruck?
It was very brief. He was walking one way, and
that's cool though.
You feel like, especially when you're a newbie on the set, you're like,
keep your head down and
keep your head down, your mouth closed, and your ears open, and you don't want the key grip to see you.
Why is the new guy talking to him? John
right,
Wayne?
because.
Yeah, no, you're right.
There was a lot of, and you're old enough where you've probably experienced it. There's a lot of keep your mouth closed, your eyes open, your ears open, and do exactly as you're told.
And nothing else.
Take your brain out, set it on the shelf when you check in.
Yeah.
I think those times have changed.
They have.
They're more willing, and the sets are much looser now. You get on some sets that are, that there's a certain level of, I won't call it tension, but you can feel that vibe.
Yeah, of course.
My career path, to make a long story endless, was that I started on the gang rigging.
Yep.
For pre-production stuff, and then I actually landed at MGM and found a home there and spent 10 years there.
MGM, which is now Sony, is that?
Sony.
Culver Studios.
Yeah, Lorimar bought it from MGM, the physical property.
Yeah.
And then Sony bought it, I think, or absorbed Lorimar when Lorimar in the 70s was huge. They had Little House on the Prairie and all these other really popular shows. So
you were basically going to MGM every day for work, and they would just put you on a different production, or
no. I was still, I kind of graduated from actually working on the gang to pushing the gang that was hang the lighting scaffolding and put up backings and get the sets ready for the production to come in. And in like 1980 or 81, there was a strike. I think it was a writer's strike.
I think,
And
ironically,
the department head at MGM retired, forced retirement because he got ill with cancer.
Okay.
And Don Lambert was his name, a wonderful man, old timer, and one of the good old timers that appreciated guys that were conscientious and hard workers, and you were rewarded for that. They kept you working. Some studios it was more about who you knew, but this guy was really wonderful.
The real deal. That's great.
And so they were getting ready to start. God, what was the name of that movie? I can't think of it. It'll come to me. Anyway, one of the older guys that was there, his name was Alex Barraza, was a grip, and he was kind of the logical choice to fill in for Don after he retired, Don Lambert, as the department head. Mm-hmm. He didn't want anything to do with it.
Yeah.
And I was had become kind of the senior foreman there. And one day, the construction department head, who also oversaw the grip department, tapped me on the shoulder and said, "You're it. We needed somebody to run this department. You've kind of got seniority. Nobody else seems to want it." So I became the department head at MGM for the last, maybe till like 1986 or 85 when Lorimar purchased it. And then, it was, you're a good man, we just can't use you.
Changed
kind of
people or whatever, yeah.
And that's when I really kind of dove into working on production.
On production.
Right, because you meet a lot of people. Key grips come in with their crews, and you make contact, and and a lot of the guys that I started with had started to move up and were keying and were in positions where they could hire. So, you take advantage of your friendships and opportunities.
So did you transition to dolly gripping at that point right away, or did you?
No,
you...
I was like I was more of an extra hammer, extra hammer, and ended up working with. Like I worked with Matt Leonetti and his crew, which at that time John Linder was his key grip, and then a very good friend of mine, Lloyd Barcroft, when John retired, became key grip, and did a lot of movies with Matt, but as an extra hammer. And then I remember at one point my buddy was doing a pilot for a show. His name is Bo Miller, and Fred Conenkamp was DP.
Mm-hmm.
Sam Dowland was the operator. I don't know if you ever knew Sam.
No.
He was a wonderful, wonderful guy.
Huh.
Vietnam Medal of Honor recipient.
Wow.
Most unassuming, quiet, unpretentious man.
Yeah.
But anyway, he was my very first operator that I was fortunate enough to work with.
Yeah.
And
as a dolly grip,
as a dolly grip. And this was not a big project, like a 10-day or 14-day.
Do you remember
shoot.
what it was?
It was some kind of lawyer TV program.
Okay.
I remember Fred Gwynn was the main actor.
Fred Gwynn.
And he's like ginormous, right?
Yeah.
He's ginormous. Yeah. And my friend, who was the key grip, Bo Miller, he was keying for Fred Conenkamp. He said, "Hey, Moose, do you think you would like to be a dolly grip?" I said, "Yeah, I'd love to give it a try."
Had you pushed dolly at all before that? Even
no.
Just,
okay. You go on the set and you get advice from guys. Hey, whenever you can get your hands on a dolly, just because if that opportunity does present itself, you want to be able to not fumble around and and looking to see which way you have to turn the knob to go.
You don't want to go
down.
up when you should go down, and down when you go up. Like what
I
always do.
And I've done that before.
That's honest,
right? No. Show me one person that hasn't made a mistake.
That's exactly right.
That's another story. Anyway, he said, and I said, yeah. And, right out of the gate, it's so obvious I didn't know anything. I was kind of pretty much clueless. So.
Well, also, but I don't know if this was what you were getting at, but as soon as you say Fred Gwynn's such a big guy, as an operator, I look at these big guys and I go, oh, these stand-ups are not going to be easy, right? Because their torso is 6 feet tall, and so immediately.
To add on to that story, Fred Gwynn being so tall and standing up I was fired from that job because of my inexperience.
Because you couldn't stay with him.
I couldn't stay with him for two reasons. Number one, and the biggest reason, was lack of experience.
Yeah.
But at that time, and we were on a Pee-wee dolly, at that time, the arms were really slow, and he stood up quick, and you
can't do anything.
The dolly couldn't have kept up with him regardless.
Yeah.
So, but you kind of take that in stride, and you kind of get, maybe your feelings hurt a little bit, but you have to understand that it's not about you. It's about, putting the director's vision on the screen.
Sure.
And you kind of brush it aside. And I continued on that job as just an extra hammer.
Yeah.
And there was an experienced dolly grip on our crew who had worked with this director, so he was the natural fill-in, and I think that also precipitated my ultimate demise.
Yeah.
But you kind of take those things in stride, and you learn from them, and I was lucky that I had Sam, because knowing why you're doing stuff is really important, because it helps you anticipate and understand. That's important to understand why you're doing certain things and why things happen a certain way.
Yeah. You're talking about as far as moves, knowing why you're doing the move, or what the reasoning behind the move is?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I didn't know, hey, you don't move, but things are different now. The camera moves. Back then, you never cut in and out of a move. You moved, and then they would cut. Especially in TV, it's talking heads.
Absolutely.
So you would, and but everything has evolved, and it's kind of there are no rules anymore about.
That's true.
So And just little things like how you ease into a move, especially if the camera's 90 degrees, off of the actor, and you're doing a walk or something that.
Yep.
You learn that, even if you miss your mark a little bit, don't correct, because that little correction means the operator has to correct, and that looks, it goes.
Yep,
bad.
It's anything that draws attention to itself.
Right. You don't want to draw attention to the
exactly
camera
right.
movement.
Yeah, no, there's no question about that. So you did that. You got fired off of that, but you got hired back on the show, or you stayed on the show.
I stayed on the show.
And then did you then sort of watch what the other Dolly Grip was doing and learn from him?
Yeah.
Or I mean,
right. And the key grip, my friend Bo Miller, he had pushed Dolly before, and he was kind of guiding me through it. And he was also had a little bit of faith in me, and and hired me on other stuff like
That's
commercials
great.
And stuff.
Oh,
and,
cool.
Although commercials were really at that time were really kind of a really close-knit small community.
Yeah. Still are in some way. Not as bad as it was, but
right.
Yeah. It's a different gig. There's no question about that. So then when did you make the jump to full-time Dolly gripping?
As you know, a lot of your work you get through relationships with other people.
Absolutely.
And one thing leads to another. So I was working for one particular key grip that was Stephen Poster's key grip.
Oh, yeah.
Marty Eichmann was his name.
Okay.
Anyway, I worked with Marty a little bit, and Steve Poster, we got along really good. George Kohut was his operator.
Did you work with Norman Parker? Norman Parker's assistant? Norman's a good friend of mine. I talked to him. Probably
How's he doing?
He's okay. I talked to him a couple times a week.
All the time?
Wears a hat all the time. Never seen him without a hat.
Never seen him
without the hat or the glasses.
Right.
We used to joke, actually, that the hat and the glasses are connected, and in the morning he puts them on.
Just puts it on.
He is.
Right.
When you look up character in the dictionary, Norman is next to him.
He's, just a real quick story about Norm, because he had a great sense of humor.
He still does.
I can't imagine that.
Before you say this, is this going to be some practical joke that he played on someone? Because he was very. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Go ahead.
So we're getting ready for. It may have been because Steve shot one of the Rocky movies.
Yeah.
Steve Poster, right?
Rocky V, I think.
Something like that.
Right.
Anyway.
Yeah.
And maybe it was that project, but it may have been another one. We did a Mel Brooks movie called Life Stinks.
Yep.
And one of those films, he calls into production and says, "So I'm going to have the grips build me a bunch of ramps and stuff because I'm in a wheelchair."
I know this story.
And what can production say? What can they say?
So the version of this that it's not the version. I think I think Norman has the tendency to resurrect bits, and I know he told me once that Stephen called him up and said, "You're going to get a call for this commercial from this company. I just want to let you know we're going to be up and down the Santa Monica Mountains all day, so get yourself a good rate because you're going to earn it."
Right.
Okay, great. So Norman makes his deal, and then and they don't tell him anything about the job, and then he says, "I just want to make sure everything's wheelchair accessible, right?" And she goes, "Huh?" And he goes, "Well, I'm in a wheelchair," and she goes, "Well, no, we're going to be maybe up and down in the mountains." And he says, "Well, I mean, it has to be wheelchair accessible. You can't not hire me because
right, exactly."
He had a lot of fun with a lot of people.
Yeah,
and I worked for Stephen for a bit, and Norman and I are still friends. But when Norman and I used to work together, it was just an interesting time. Let's just put it that way. He's a character. Yeah.
I loved working with him and Steve Poster, and he always had wonderful camera crew. Always.
Yep. Did you work?
He was a wonderful guy.
Did you work a bunch of movies with Stephen?
Not really.
Yeah.
The Rocky and some commercials, and then the Life Stinks, and then I think our paths crossed a few times maybe, but not really a steady diet. There's a couple of DPs, and as you know, direct photographies have a crew that they like to work with, and it starts with the key grip, and and it kind of funnels down from there. I was lucky enough to hook up with key grips that had, and it's so funny how circumstances lead you from one project to another. So I was working, I kind of went in on Life Stinks because Steve Poster asked for me.
Yeah.
And I met the key grip on that, and who was also Adam Greenberg's key grip.
Oh, wow.
So because I met Bob Gray, who was Steve's key grip on that particular project, and we got along famously. We had a lot of shared interests and stuff like that. When Bob, who was also king for Adam Greenberg, got a job and it came up, and he asked me, "Hey, do you want to work? Do you want to Dolly Grip on this?" And I think maybe the first one was Sister Act.
Oh, wow. Okay. There you go.
Mike Benson was the camera operator, the great Bensoni. And Adam was Dennis Lane was the focus puller. And so I did 5 years, and Adam was a workaholic. At least two features a year.
Huge DP for a long time.
With Jim
Big
Cameron
movies.
and
big movies.
never had the opportunity to work with him with Jim Cameron, which I kind of, wish that had happened. But he was one of the big guys, in the 80s. He was, he did a lot of major projects, and I was fortunate enough to be involved in a lot of those.
That's great. So you have done 8 movies with Michael Bey.
Yes.
And I don't think it's any secret to anybody out there. Michael Bey has a reputation of maybe being a little bit of a tough director to work with for some people.
Right.
But clearly, if you've done 8 movies with Michael Bey, there's you learned how to work within that system. Can you talk about that at all? About how do you work with? And I'm not saying anything against Michael Bey, but just I'm using that as an example.
Right.
He's a very demanding director, right?
Yes.
And I you hear all sorts of things, but how do you not let that affect you and do your job well? And still, obviously, I'm assuming you're endeared to him because he wouldn't keep wanting you back, I would imagine. There
are some directors that are really technically savvy and some that are very detached.
Yeah.
I've worked with both.
Yeah.
And most of them are kind of in the middle.
Yeah, sure.
But one director I worked with on a pretty big movie, I won't name any names, but at the end of a 5-month shoot, that gentleman did not know my name.
Really?
And I was the camera Dolly Grip.
Yeah.
Billy Rowe was the operator.
Oh, Billy Rowe. Okay, yeah.
So what I liked about Michael Bey was that he was really involved, and technically pretty savvy about
he must be,
especially
right?
camera movement, because that was kind of one of his fortes.
Is he demanding about it? I mean, I'm very specific. I want this to that to.
It was a very interesting process. I'm going to kind of jump to my first experience with Michael. So
what was that? What movie was that?
It would be Pearl Harbor.
Pearl Harbor. Oh, it was a big movie.
Yeah, big movie.
Yeah.
At that time, it was maybe one of the biggest ones going.
Who was the operator on that?
That was
Chris Harhoff on that?
Chris may have been on it.
For some reason, I think of Chris's name, but maybe that was. I mean, there was there's like Pearl Harbor and there's Midway, and there's a lot of those sort of similar, big movies. But anyway, regardless of which,
it'll come to me. So, Les Tamita is the key grip. John Schwartzman, wonderful man, who I was fortunate enough to work with on his, with Les on his crew on a lot of films. I get the call, and Les had done kind of a test drive with me to see how I would get along with Richard Mosier was John's focus puller on a couple of commercials. And Richard and I got along famously.
Yeah.
We got along really well. So that was kind of a litmus test to see, because chemistry is a really important thing.
100%.
Especially in that really tight circle of the operator, the focus puller, and the Dolly grip.
Yep.
And Richard and I got along really well. And although in my mind I wasn't the logical choice, because another friend of mine who is an excellent Dolly grip and recently retired, Jack Glenn, had worked with Les and John on movies and stuff like that. But because Richard could be kind of fussy, and Les knew that I got along really well with Richard, I got the call to push A camera, and Jack went to B camera.
Yeah.
And just so, because a lot of people go, well, A camera, you're better than, it doesn't work like that.
Any of us in the business know that's not
right.
true. Yeah.
But a lot of people don't know that.
Yeah, that's
you know,
true.
You know, and I know this is directed more specifically at
No, but it's worth pointing, even to people who are newer. It's worth pointing.
right. It's
pointing out.
Especially with Michael Bey. There's really no distinction between A and B.
Yeah.
He's interested in just getting the shots.
And good,
you know.
yeah, good and getting the shot.
Good.
You know, what I usually tell people is, I think A camera just has more responsibility than B camera.
Right. And the A camera operator is usually the lead guy,
Yeah,
and you get to get the preferred shot. You know, B camera a lot of time kind of gets the fall off, right?
Yep.
You know, the shot that maybe the lighting's not exactly what you want, or
Although personally speaking, I have to tell you, there's a lot of times when I'll be the A camera operator and I'll set something up, and then I'll go look at what the B camera
And they
operator's
have-
found, and I'm like, oh, this is so much better
This
than
is-
what I'm
this is
doing.
so much
because
better.
nobody's watching them, and they're sort of sneaking in and going,
right.
oh, I got this
yeah,
little
yeah,
piece.
they can, you know, you watch the rehearsal and you see this is
Yeah.
this is going to be a really cool
Yeah. While
shot.
Dave does the boring shot, I'm going to do this interesting
Right.
piece over here. Yeah.
So I get off the airplane and it's on the van right out to the set.
This is Hawaii, I'm assuming.
This is in
Okay,
Hawaii,
yeah.
on Ford Island there, on
Yeah.
the airstrip there.
Mhm.
And I'm thinking, oh, you know, okay, we set up 100 feet of track, and you know. And,
So the show's already going, and you've come in.
well, they're doing some pre-production
Oh, okay,
days, you know,
gotcha.
which are
Yeah.
actually production days. They just
Yeah.
don't put them on the
On
schedule.
paper, they
right?
call it
Right.
something else, yeah.
They're cheating.
Yep.
So set up some track,
Yeah.
you know, and at this point in my career, I'm still more of an A to B guy, and this was one of my great awakenings about, you know, especially working with Michael. And so, something happens, you know, we dolly down the track, and then I just park it there,
Yeah.
and you know, the action keeps going because as long as he's seeing stuff going on, he wants the
He
cameras.
wants to keep shooting.
Right,
Yeah.
he wants you to keep shooting.
Yep.
And
But you parked it there, meaning because it's the end of the shot,
right,
and
he
that's
said,
what you've
I want you to go
rehearsed.
from here
Yeah.
to here, and I thought, okay, well,
Okay, yeah.
you know, at the end of it, he goes, "Why did you stop moving?" Or you know, something to that
Yeah,
effect.
yeah.
So I learned pretty quickly that with Michael, you never stop moving the camera unless he says, you know, I want to settle here.
Yeah.
And
But if he doesn't, you assume.
right, you
Yeah.
assume.
Yep.
And it was a new way for me for looking at things, you know. So
Sure.
you have to tune in to what's going on in front of the camera.
Yeah.
And be aware of, you know, the lighting, and you don't want to get in an unflattering position with the camera, which I've done. You know,
It
you
happens.
put the camera where it shouldn't be,
Exactly.
and
Yeah.
you're let it be known that, hey, why did you do that?
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
So that one of my things about working with Michael was I always thought that the good aspects of working with him far outweighed the bad aspects,
Yeah.
because in my view he made you a better technician because he was very demanding.
That's great, actually.
And Jacques Jouffret
Sure.
did a lot of Michael Bey movies, knows how to set a shot, great operator. And initially when we were setting up a shot, it would be, okay, this is what he wants to see. But we know it's going to keep going, so Jacques and I would, okay, we have a plan B, we have a plan C, if something happens over here. And then you have your headsets and you're constantly in communication, because if you're special, and Michael lived on a 50-foot Technocrane. That was one of his favorite tools.
Yeah. So you got to be ready for anything.
For anything,
Yeah.
because he liked that mobility and being able to get, you know, really low and really high and big sweeping moves, and you know, really get in tight, and you know, so many options when you're on that 50-foot Techno
Oh yeah.
crane.
Yeah.
And you would kind of work out different plans. You know, okay, we've got that part that he really wanted, but we know the action's going to keep going. So let's go over. You know, let's see what we can see over here, and then as as the scene plays out, especially action sequences, you would either Jacques would see something or Dave Emmerich's, because
Sure.
Jacques wasn't his only operator.
Yep.
You would go, okay, well, let's go up here, and I would say there might be something interesting over here, or you do a low sweep across and try and because it's all bits and pieces,
Yep,
right? They're going to cut
exactly.
in and out of the move, and you would just try and find something interesting.
But that's probably why you did 8 movies with him, because whether I'm sure he's smart enough to realize why, but either way, he's going, when this guy's here, I'm getting great stuff, because you're thinking about all that ahead of time and preparing for it, right?
Right, and
know.
it's and also when you're doing that, it's you also, as the crane grip and dolly grip, it applies to also. You have to think about the focus puller. You don't want to get in too tight, and it helps to know what lens you're on, obviously, and what stop you're working at.
Yep.
There's so many things that come into play when you're kind of freewheeling it, and
Because you don't want to hang anybody else out to dry.
Right. You don't want
because you're doing your thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Just because, I think this will be cool. Well, you just screwed the
Yeah.
focus puller,
That's
right?
exactly
You're 2 inches inside of minimum.
Yep.
And when it goes into the editing room, we've all seen it. You go, why did they pick that shot? Where the guy gets buzzed, or there's
It's the
just
one bad moment of the
for
shot.
one
and they
bad
used
moment
it.
of the shot, and you go, why did you have to use that one?
Yep.
And the director goes always, well, that was the performance I liked,
Mm-hmm.
and the technical aspect of it, but us as technicians, we always want to give the director exactly what he wants.
Yeah.
And you want everything to be right. You want some quality, a good quality shot.
So let me ask you a question for someone who's new. 50-foot techno crane shot, right? Shot that starts up on the left in a window and then comes down and comes past someone who's walking in a house and then pushes up and then drives over to the side and finds something else. How do you decide? Well, first of all, when they lay out the shot, are you already in your mind thinking, okay, the crane should be here because of back panning and this and that and the other? Are you already sort of deciding that?
Yes. And in conversation with the operator, and especially, and I was really fortunate. I worked with some really experienced guys that were really good on the wheels as far as back panning.
Yeah.
And when I first started, the techno cranes were in their infancy. I mean, the first one came over was a 20-footer.
Uh-huh.
And I remember seeing it, and and everybody knew this was going to kind of be the future.
Did it kind of blow your mind?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. And did it work well?
Yeah. I mean, for that, it was kind of cumbersome and awkward, and it had these big hoses and stuff, and you were limited because it was 20 foot, but you could still do stuff
that you never could have done before,
could
really,
never
right?
could have done without, on a dolly or anything like that, because they didn't have, we can just take that track out, with the.
No, they couldn't digitally remove it like we do now.
They didn't have that.
Yeah.
So basically, all the cranes that I worked on when I first started as a dolly grip were all like Titan cranes, the Chapman cranes, and the stage cranes.
So fixed cranes, basically.
Fixed length cranes.
Yeah.
And the take apart cranes were just kind of coming into existence at that point. The Matthews were really kind of the first ones to have that that jib arm kind of thing.
Sure.
So when you were setting up a shot, because there was no back pan compensator, you always had to set it up to minimize any kind of back panning that the operator had to do.
And would you say, as a new operator, let's just say back pan doesn't exist. I mean, I know it does exist, but let's say you have a head that it doesn't exist. Would you say for a new operator that should be the number one concern? I mean, assuming they can get the shot any other way, of where to put the base to minimize your back pan?
For me, I always did.
Yeah.
You'd kind of walk through the shot, and they'd go, okay, I want to start up here and end here or whatever. So in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, because you also have to consider the guy that's doing the extension and retraction,
Yeah.
and that who is an integral part of that too.
Absolutely.
And everything has to kind of work as a cohesive unit.
Yep.
So you're kind of putting all these variables, kind of crunching the numbers, and then for me, I would think I would go to the operator, or we would be standing there. What do you think? We're going to start up here, and the operator would say, "This is what we're doing. This is what they want."
Yep.
And I would say, "Well, I think the chassis should go here, so we can, that's going to be the least amount of back pan for you." And
So you do explain the why you think the positives.
right? Yeah. Always explain my my reasoning, because I think that it helps them understand where I'm coming from.
Yep.
And then if they have input, okay, well, that's going to work great for that shop, but we're in a hurry as usual. So let's think about the next shot after that. Can we position the post where we can just not have to move the chassis of the techno crane, and this will work for additional shots.
So basically, finding out what shots you're going to have to get with this, and going, is there one area that can maximize all of these?
That can to maximize the time and give the director and the actors more time.
Yeah. And now, if I'm a brand new operator, right, and I'm coming on set and I'm working with someone like Moose Shultz, who's been around forever and knows as much as you do, as the operator, I'm supposed to be driving the bus per se, right? But I don't know what you know. So how do I talk to you about what we need and whatever? Or I mean, is there a way to do that utilizes your skills, but still the operator's not going to, a brand new operator isn't going to turn and go, I don't know what I'm doing. What do we do? Generally speaking, some might.
Right.
But you know what I mean?
Yeah. I think an experienced dolly grip is going to figure out pretty quick that an operator is new, especially in today's film environment where fluid heads are kind of the predominant thing. And
unfortunately,
I agree. and guys are not quite as proficient. A lot of guys that are just starting aren't as proficient on a gear head, or wheels, and which on a techno crane or any kind of crane, really, it's almost a must.
It has to be. But let me ask you a question about that. So you saying, just because, again, I'm trying, this is really about, again, I didn't say it at the beginning, but, a lot of this is about, I'm trying to put information out there that I wish I knew when I was starting out.
Right.
So an operator shows up you never know. You've never met before. You don't have IMDb. You can't look them up, whatever. I mean, it doesn't really exist, but that's okay. So you're basically, right from the bat, you're sort of going, is he going to the fluid head or is he going to the wheels? And if he's going to the wheels, so you can kind of figure out where they are in the spectrum of experience.
Right. I mean, and never judgmental.
No, of course.
Never
it's
judgmental, because
knowing how much you have to be involved and where you should be.
Right. So the first thing you do, really, I think, is when you walk on a movie set, is you check your ego. Because there's no room. There's a lot of other egos already on the set. So as a dolly grip, you kind of, you have to, know your place may sound a little harsh, but that's how it is. You know, and
for everyone, I think.
For everyone.
Yeah, for everyone.
So you check your ego and forget about that stuff and. Communication is everything between the operator and the focus puller, and there's constant communication in that little tight circle. And the best thing to do, I found, is to be honest, and if the operator's, isn't sure about what is going to be the best way to do this, you make suggestions, and you have to kind of find out what they're comfortable with also.
Yeah.
Does this sound good to you? You don't want to come in, hey, I'm the guy, I've been doing this for this many years.
This is how we're doing it. I don't care.
This is the best way to do it.
Yep.
1,000 ways to get to Santa Monica.
Yeah.
I want primary concern is for you to be able to do your job, and both of us give the director the shot that he wants. And in order for that to happen, it's in my best interest to make it easier for you, what's easiest for you, whether it be on the techno crane or on a dolly where you're turned around and you have to do a 180. So, so let's talk about how you like to move about on the dolly. Are you comfortable, hanging off the dolly and doing it this, or would you rather, and I try to think of different, options in how to approach the shot, and give the operator options of what's going to work best for him as far as, making him comfortable if it's on a dolly, moving around the dolly, or what's going to make them comfortable and enable them to do what they need to do. And, present a couple different options and talk it through and see what's going to work best. And sometimes, you'll try the shot and it doesn't work, and you'll make some adjustments.
Yeah. And you were talking about before on the Michael Bey movies, there's a little bit of this is the shot and then it's going to continue, so let's make up some things and be ready and whatever. And then there are the other shots that, I don't have an idea in my, but a straight dramatic thing where it's, it's a push in or a drive-by or something like that, where it's an A to B move. Do you prefer one over the other?
I like, and one of the reasons I kind of stuck with, and kept taking jobs with Michael was because I like really being actively involved in the process. And that was a big draw for me because he relied not just on the dolly grip, but, and put a lot of trust in the operator and the
whole camera team.
Whole camera team to get him the footage that he wanted. Yep. So that was always a big a draw for me. When you have a really intricate shot that might be technically difficult, it's rewarding to nail that shot. Even if it is okay. So you have a multiple position move, especially like on something on the techno crane when you're on Jurassic World, the kind of the reboot when Chris Pratt first came on for that reboot. John Schwartzman was the camera DP and Ian Fox was the operator. Wonderful, really great on the wheels. Anyway, a whiz on a techno crane. And Ian is really good at, setting up shots. And so we would have these multiple, really intricate, from the wider end of the spectrum all the way into overs and, maybe even sometimes you'd push in for a dramatic close-up. So when you kind of nail something like that, you go, oh, this is fun. This is what it's about.
When all the pieces click.
Right, when they all click and you're challenged, because I think as technicians, we all like to be challenged and, expand and keep an open mind and learn different things and, try and rise up to a challenge and become better. Because we're never perfect. We all make mistakes. And, you're constantly improving or trying to improve and learn. And every shot, not every shot, but a lot of shots on more complicated shots, it makes you better technicians. And it boosts your confidence. I can do that. And a lot of being a crane grip and dolly grip and support for camera is having confidence in your ability and knowing that when I screw up, it's not the end of the world. It's, and somebody might be a little whatever, but that, we'll just do it again. It happens. Here's an interesting story that kind of illustrates that. So I was working on a TV show. Lloyd Ahern was
Good guy.
Great guy.
Yeah.
And anyway, we had set up some, and it was multiple cameras, and we had set up a shot, and so we had like a 10-to-1 zoom on, and the focus puller, can I say his name? Mike Fauntleroy.
Oh, Mike Fauntleroy. I don't know him, but I know the name. Definitely, yeah.
Really, really good focus puller.
Yeah,
old school.
I was going to say a big time focus puller,
on
right?
the wheel all the time.
Yeah, of course.
Unless and Richard Mosier was the same way. He was the guy that was up at the lens.
Yeah,
working.
that's what everybody was back then.
Right.
Yeah.
Anyway, so something happened where he was zooming in or something like that, and he was supposed to zoom out, and the director thought that I had moved the dolly instead of zooming the wrong direction. They thought that the dolly had moved.
Yeah.
So it was a mistake, but all mistakes aren't necessarily bad.
No, sometimes you find something cool.
Sometimes you come across something that's
Absolutely.
very interesting, and sometimes you mess up and you go, oh, and you just want to stop.
Yep.
But you have to stay focused and continue on, because just because it's not exactly what they wanted doesn't mean that it's not usable.
Yep.
And it doesn't turn out to be a good shot. Right?
No question.
That's just the nature of the game.
Well, look, the thing that I always say is, I don't know, like 80% of the things I come up with are probably by mistake. The key is making it look like you intended to do it.
Right. Yeah.
That's success right there.
Yeah.
But I think we all play that game. Do you know, I work a lot with a Dolly Grip named Steve Hubble, whose dad was a Dolly Grip, I think.
Don Hubble.
Don Hubble, okay.
I knew Don. I don't know Steve, but I knew Don.
I figured you would.
Never really on... because Don started around the same time that I did. So I knew Don from our pre-production days, on the gang at MGM.
Back when you were in the
and
gang,
stuff
sure,
like that.
sure. And then you guys kind of probably went on different paths or whatever.
And, Dolly Grips are like camera operators. You
don't work together.
You don't work together. So you go, oh, I know this guy.
Or maybe you work with someone on their way up on B, and then once they go to A, they're on something different. But Steve is fantastic, and he's such an incredible collaborator. And the best thing that I like about him is he's a complete storyteller. Like, the thing that I always say is there's people who know how to move from A to B, and there's people who know why they're moving from A to B, and he's completely the latter. Well, he's both, I guess.
He's in tune to what's going on.
He's completely. I'll tell you a story you'll probably like. We were on Snowfall, and there's a scene where this guy walks in and slits this guy's throat, and the guy falls down. And at the end of the scene, he then sits back in a chair. So the camera's on the floor. You got the dead guy in front of you on the floor. The camera's low. Dead guy in front of you on the floor, and the guy's sitting completely on the opposite side of him in the chair. And the shot that the director wanted was to push forward and up and into anybody listening to the podcast, I may have told this story again before, but I like it, into the guy in the chair. And we were running out of light, and I think timing or whatever, and we were in this small house, and I was looking at it. I looked at Steve, and I said, "How are we going to get past him? We don't, well, we can get this and we can get that." And so the director was there, and I said, "Hey, he's on the phone. Are you going to be cutting back and forth on the phone?" And she says, "Oh yeah, the whole time." And I said, "So would you ever use this as one piece?" And she goes, "No, probably not. Why?" And I said, "Well, because I think just for time, maybe what we should do is do the first half of it, then pause, pull the guy out, and then do the second half of it, as long as that doesn't change your cut, Right. And she, no. And she goes, "Yeah, that's great." And she walks out, and then Steve taps me on he grabs me by the thing. He goes, No, we got to do it as one shot. We got to do it all as one shot. I got to do it as one shot. And I said, "Well, how are we going?" He goes, "I don't know. I'm going to go. I've already got the drop down coming in. You just figure out how to get him out of the way. I have to do this shot. I have to." And he was like a little kid. Right. I said, "Okay." So I said, "What do you want?" He goes, "Don't worry. I'm going to do the move. You just figure out how to." So I looked at the frame, and I said, "You know what? If we put a Fernie pad down underneath you, do you mind?" To the actor, I said, "Do you mind if we pull you out as we go forward?" He said, "No, that's fine." So we did that, and it was really because and it turned out to be this great shot. The only thing that screwed it up the first time was there were two women who were actresses who were off camera left, we didn't tell them what we were doing.
Oh, yeah.
And so as we pushed it on the first one, they started to laugh. So we had to do it again. That was my fault. But it was so funny because that's Steve. It's like he saw a bit of storytelling that he said, I just can't not do this. It's going to be so great. And sure enough, it was great. And I'm fairly certain it's all one piece and they play everything until they land in it. But that's what you hope for in a dolly grip, I think. And in that team, right?
Right.
Is that you're both going, no, this is just too good not to do. We have to figure it out.
Right.
Yeah.
Something that's difficult and challenging should spark you, should make you say, we can do this.
Absolutely. Yeah, that was more about time. But it's one of the things that I'll say to him actually quite often is I'll go, you know what? I'm really sorry, but I think I don't think we're going to be able to do this way. I think we got to put down some track here. Or there's one specifically thing where it was right up next to a tree where, the dirt goes up. And I said, I really hate to do this, but I think we got to be that close to it. So you're going to have to build all the track up. And he just looked at me and he goes, Dave, sometimes we have to do hard things. It's not a problem. And I said, I know, but I'd like to move it over to help you out. And he goes, no, it's okay. We'll put it up and, boom, boom, boom. Those guys are great. So they got it. One of the movies you worked on was The Birdcage.
Yes.
I have to assume that there were moments in that movie where you had to control your laughter.
Oh my God!
I mean, on movies like that, do you find yourself having to bite your tongue? And because I love that movie so much.
One of I'm retired, so you kind of reflect and look back on your career, and you go
the highlights.
Right, yeah. There's a couple movies that I'm really proud that to say that I was a participant in that, and I made some contributions. And that was one of them. And Robin Williams, who was wonderful,
brilliant, right?
And he was brilliant, and uncontained.
Yeah.
I mean, he couldn't stop himself.
Well, it just seems like, watching that movie, it's such an environment that's ripe for him just having, and he seems to be having such a blast. Everyone seems to be having such a blast in it, right?
And that was the atmosphere.
Yeah. Now, the opening of that movie is that helicopter shot that then morphs into a techno crane shot across the street.
A helicopter shot.
Yeah.
That morphed into Scott Sakamoto was the operator.
Yeah, sure, great operator.
Great. I've been so fortunate to work with these operators who are so good at what they do.
Yeah.
We had a take apart crane. It was in Miami.
Okay.
And they gave us a high position to where the helicopter had kind of come into a certain point and stopped. Yeah. So we had Scott on I don't remember what arm it was.
Oh, he's wearing a Steadicam, you're saying? He's on the crane with a Steadicam.
He's wearing a set.
Oh, I didn't realize that part is Steadicam. For some reason, I thought it was like 3 shots or something.
It was 3 shots.
Oh, okay. All right.
The helicopter shot, and then we started up high and did a push in and did a step off.
Okay, so he steps off of the crane onto the street, right? And there are cars going by and all that stuff.
We've set up some tracks, so it's a push in and a drop down. Scott steps off, and he goes through the crowd up to the doors to the Birdcage, the nightclub, and they morph it into the third shot, and it was a different.
Oh, the inside is once you get inside, it's a different shot, I guess.
It was a different shot.
Yeah, okay.
It was. I can't remember the operator's name, but it was a different Steadicam operator at that point.
Oh, it was another Steadicam shot? Oh, because that was on stage somewhere else or something?
That was on
I see.
Stage
okay, gotcha.
Here in Hollywood.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
So that was 3 separate shots. And unless you're really, really looking, pretty seamless.
Yeah, no, and especially, by the way, for back then, completely seamless. Now you
can kind of.
It would be a little better now because of but really well done.
Right.
Yeah.
And it was meticulously planned out.
I'm sure.
Yeah. It was not, let's just kind of throw something at the wall and see what sticks.
Clearly.
Kind of thing.
But so do you find yourself on movies like that having to catch yourself from laughing? Is it hard to stay out of it?
Yeah, because which is one of the great things about being close to the action as a dolly grip is you get to witness and see great performances and that was what I always felt was one of the perks of being a dolly grip was you're not only directly involved with the end product, you get to see these great artists performing. And, that was, and sometimes it's not hard to get sucked in, because sometimes it's just, that engrossing where you're like, wow, this is freaking awesome.
And you mean not get lost in it and remember your cues
and not get lost and forget about what you're actually
drive off the
supposed
track because
right.
you're watching
forget about what you're actually supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
But on the birdcage, Robin was, he couldn't stop his mind from working. I mean, something would happen and he would just go off on a tangent, and it was great.
Yeah.
It was such, and what a cast!
Every single person in that
Crazy,
movie is incredible
crazy
and
good.
perfectly cast. Also, by the way,
Yep.
it's fantastic. It's a great movie. As soon as I saw that, I was like, I have to ask you about the birdcage.
Yeah, that was I'd say one of the highlights.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What are the other highlights you can think of?
Seabiscuit, I was really
Great movie.
proud of working
Who directed
on
that?
That was Gary Ross.
Gary Ross, yeah.
Who was a writer turned director, who
Oh.
wrote a movie that I did, Ivan Reitman, who I did several movies with, called Dave.
By the way, I've always thought a completely underrated movie.
Underrated.
Such a great movie.
Underrated.
Yeah.
Great movie, great cast.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, Seabiscuit. Anyway, Gary was now the director. John Schwartzman, the DP. Ian, and I think Andrew Rollins was B camera, Steadicam.
Sure.
Or maybe, I think it was Andrew.
Yeah.
Anyway, Gary was one of these guys that everything was mapped out. And we had some, especially for the horse racing sequences, the jockeys would get out on the track. We would have, before we ever started shooting, when we went to these different various horse racing tracks around the country, we had all the jockeys, the camera operators. Alan Padelford had his vehicle that he just had made specially for that, and we had a 30-foot techno crane mounted on the back of his big rig thing there. And we would all get out on the track and walk, and everybody would take the position. I would take the position of the camera.
Yeah.
And we would walk through every shot, because the horses could only do it, and they only had so many rounds of horses, and they could only do it so many times. So you really had to kind of nail it on your first take. And if you were lucky, you got a second take. So we would walk the track. Okay,
Yeah.
we want the camera here, and everything was in perspective as far as relationship to where the camera was, to where, and the jockeys would represent where the horses were going to be.
That's
and Gary
amazing.
would say, I want this horse to pull a hit here, and we want to be here. Very specific about the camera movement and camera placement. So pretty involved, and challenging and rewarding.
Wow. And there's some incredible footage in that movie, so clearly you guys pulled it off.
Yeah.
It paid off. A couple of times you've talked about different operators and said, great operator, great. From your point of view, what's a great operator to you? Like, as far as if people are coming up in this business and they're looking for the skill set that they need to be a good operator to work with a great dolly grip, what helps you? What aspect of them? What aspects?
I think being nice is huge, and willing to communicate openly, and and instead of, especially if you have a seasoned guy that's experienced, that has seen a lot of things done a lot of different ways. And communication is always key. What do you think? Do you think we can do this? Do you think this would be better?
Yeah.
Sometimes it's very cut and dried.
Sure,
It's
of
just,
course.
okay, we're going to go from here to here. Or
Yeah.
It's when you get into the more maybe complicated shots where you have multiple moves, and you never want to compromise the shot. That was kind of always my view, was we want to give the director if they're realistic, sometimes they're not about where they want to put. I want the camera, and they have it in a corner where maybe they could have cameras now, or they could fit a camera up in there.
Yeah.
But
No, back then.
It was okay. We can put a 100-foot mag on or something like that, and a prime lens, but there are physical limitations. So, you try and work through stuff like that, because you don't want to compromise the shot that the director gives. So, discussing, what are our alternatives? What can we do to make this better? And you do rehearsal, or you'll do the first take, and then if I think of something, I go, do you think this might be better?
Yeah.
Or the operator will say, start your rise a little later, make it, or do it quicker, or do it, slower, or you're refining.
Yeah.
So it's an ongoing conversation. A lot of times it is. It's an ongoing conversation about how to improve and make things better.
Sure. I mean, it sounds like the big part of it. I like the fact that you started being nice. Actually, almost everybody I ask says, new tips for new operators is be nice, which I totally agree with, because, who wants to be around someone who's not nice for 16 hours a day, especially 2.5 feet away from that person.
Right,
that person.
And again, I won't name any names on this one.
I'll beep them out.
but a pretty big movie, and the operator was not only not nice to the dolly grip that was assigned to him, because this was like a 3 or 4 camera at times, pretty big action movie. He was not only not nice to his dolly grip, but he was nasty to his focus puller and the second, and the key grip would come up to me and say, "Hey, can you work with?" I said, "I'm not working with him."
Yeah,
it doesn't pay to be. No. I mean, even if you don't have to be best friends.
No. But you got to be decent.
But you have to be. You have to be decent and treat people with respect.
But also in that situation, you're setting yourself up for failure if you know what that is. It's
right.
like I know what my limitations are, even though they're not limitations, and I won't be dealt with a certain way. This isn't going to work, so let's just not try it. You know?
And it was just it's like nobody wanted to work with the guy.
Yeah, that's too bad. It happens though.
But
it happens.
Was it his ego? Was it just his regular demeanor? I don't know, because and I didn't take the time to learn what was behind this. What I thought was poor behavior.
And of course, you also never know what's going on in someone's life. Maybe they're just having a terrible time and whatever.
And I try to consider that too because people will say, well, how about this director? Or how about this actor? And I'm going, well, I'll start out by saying, in my experience, but I don't know what was going on, especially with actors that sometimes can be standoffish or, don't seem to whatever. You never know what kind of relationship they have with the director and with the producers, and that affects how their demeanor on the set.
It's trickle down.
Absolutely.
No
so you kind of got to set all that stuff to the side and not take anything on a personal level, unless it's directed at you personally. I would do shots for Michael Bey, and he would tell me, that's the worst shot I've ever seen in the world. I'd say, well, we won't do that again. But he's not saying to me, you're the worst crane grip or the worst dolly grip I've ever worked with. And I would just say, well, we won't do that again.
Sure, yeah.
And you don't do it, you don't.
Yeah, my response would probably be, well, you haven't seen some of the other shots I've done, but we won't do that again.
Right, we won't do that again. So, what didn't, or you say, if you have a relationship with the director, which on Michael's movie, he was.
Sounds like he was heavily involved with you guys.
Always.
100%.
Always. With the dolly grip and the operator and the focus puller, he's a camera guy.
Yeah.
That's what he is, and he moves the camera. And you you could talk to him like you and I are talking.
Yeah.
You know, he was that kind of director.
Yeah.
You know, it wasn't direction by committee like so many projects.
Well, no question.
Are
I
now.
mean, he knows what he wants, and he knows
Right.
how to
And
get it. And
he doesn't want people in his
Yep.
ear. You know, he's
Yeah.
he's already got it worked out, his
Yeah.
cuts. He would say, I've already made this movie,
Yep.
you know, even before the first day of production.
now we just got to put it into
Right. Now we just need to,
Yep.
to execute the shots. And you would have the conversation with him directly. Okay,
Yeah.
well, what didn't you like about that, or what can I do that you might
That's fair
think
enough.
is better?
Yeah. Well, look, this is a perfect example. I talked to David Emmerich. I talked to you. Talking about Michael Bey. Michael Bey, I mean, like I said, there's no secret. There's sort of a feeling out there that he's a tough person to work with, and this and that and the other. But you've shed some light on positive aspects of working with him, obviously. So, you know, clearly. Do you have any tips for younger operators, mainly as far as working with the dolly grip?
You know, if you're not sure about maybe what's the best way to do it,
Yeah.
don't be afraid to say, what do you think?
Yeah.
You know, and take advice. And, you know, not that you have to do it that way, but it's a different set of eyes, a different way to look at a shot.
Yeah.
You know, and because somebody that's been doing it for a long time has experienced a lot of different setups and ways to do things, they may have something that, you know, suits your style of operating.
Sure. Yeah.
You know, or the style of operating that the director prefers. You know, some guys like it center punch. Some guys like it more traditional. You know, so I'd say to new operators, take advantage of the knowledge, not just from the dolly grip, but from if you have an experienced focus puller, or you know, anybody that has more experience, or you know, has a different perspective. It may work for you, and it may not.
Yeah. I started ER as the A-camera Steadicam operator when I was 27, I think, 26, 27. And I didn't know what I was doing. I mean, I had an inkling of what I was doing, but I was not a.
Right.
And Terrence Nightingale was my assistant, and he'd been around forever. I mean, he was like a clapper loader on Princess Bride, and I remember like the third or fourth day, I trying to be the A-camera operator and saying we need this and we need this, and I said, all right, so let's get the wheels and a 27 and something or other, and he sort of shook his head no, and I looked at him and I said, the fluid head, and he shook his head yes, and I said, and the 32, and he shook his head yes, and I said, he goes, good, that's what we'll bring.
Right.
But it was that thing of like I was trying to, and I think he realized that I wasn't quite ready for the shot that I was doing on the wheels yet.
Right.
But he kept me out of trouble on it,
Right.
Yeah. What about do you as a dolly grip, do you get involved with the actors at all?
Sometimes.
Yeah.
Sometimes. I did a film, 6 Days, 7 Nights, another Ivan Reitman film, and Harrison Ford was the actor. An operator in dolly grips, best friend is an actor that's predictable, right?
Oh yeah.
And Harrison was wonderful at it.
And he's got to be a pro who understands what you have to do as well, right?
Would clear himself in overs, so none of this and sliders weren't around then.
No.
So, he knew how to clear
Find the
himself,
camera,
so
yeah.
you didn't have to correct.
Oh,
And if it was one of those things where you're kind of following his action, he would say, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to look over here, and then I'm going to stand up. Yep. And he would do it that exact same way every time. Yep. There are times when, especially in action films, you're on a bicycle dolly, or you're on track, or you're tracking with somebody that's running fast. You really don't want them to have to try and fake it too much because it looks hokey.
It looks
right?
hokey, yeah.
So there are times when I would go to an actor and say, hey, listen, I'm going as fast as I can.
Yeah.
Is there any way, we can, and I appreciate any way you can, never say, hey, you got to slow down. Can you, it's all in your approach, right? Can you help me out on this? Or if somebody's doing a stand up or a sit down and they called it Groucho,
Oh yeah. Yep.
And this is stuff, me personally, I think that they should be teaching in acting classes, because it does no good to be a great actor if we can't capture.
If we can't,
film.
when you were saying the Fred Gwynn story earlier, early on. It made me think of my first day, my second day. I remember on ER, Eric LaSalle, who's now a good friend of mine, but he was one of the actors, and he's a tall guy. And to me, the stand-up, some of it is about what you physically do, but a lot of it has to do with how big how tall your torso is, because it's just your that arc is covering a lot of space, right? And he came up to me, and I had to stand him up from a seated position, and he said to me something to the effect of, I don't remember if he did it before he stood up or after, but he said, "You're never going to forget the first day that you had to stand Eric LaSalle up from a chair," because he just knew that he did this weird like duck, and then he shot straight up. And he would even try to slow it down a little bit, but just the physics of it was always this big mess that you just landed on, and
because
you got there.
The Dolly Grip was probably, he sees the guy initiating his stand up.
Oh yeah.
And then the guy goes like this, and his head goes down like this. So you're going like this, and all of a sudden you're.
Well, and Steve Robertson was my Dolly Grip on that, who was great and is a big part, just as much as Terrence, that I succeeded on that show. And he knew, obviously, because this was his third season, so he knew when to go, but you could only go so fast, like you were talking about, and the rest, and his thing was just hang on and try to stick with him.
Yeah.
But have you ever had situations where an operator just did the wrong thing with an actor, and it just went south as far as? And I'm just wondering if that's the case, what you can, like what you shouldn't do with an actor, I guess is. And if you don't, that's okay. I mean, you already said you never say like, I need you to do this. I mean, that's
right.
I think
because I thought that was a bad approach.
And I think usually what I'll do is like, I don't know if you can help me out with this, or I'm having a It's always about what they can do for you, as opposed to I need this from you.
Right, because you don't want to stifle their creativity too. But again, I go back to, you can be very creative, but if we can't capture it, on film, then so it's to your advantage to hit your marks and find the light, because do you want to be seen? Do you want to be heard? Do you want to be presented in? Nobody wants to look at the top of your head or up your nose. So I'm not doing this to make my life easier. I'm doing this, and although that's a byproduct, I'm doing this because this is going to make you look better.
Sure.
This is going to, and it's going to make the project, the movie, or the shot better. This is, I'm coming at this strictly from the standpoint of a technician who wants to get the best possible shot we can, and I think most actors, if they understand that, and you're not trying to direct them artistically, and I think a lot now actors, the more old school actors like Harrison Ford and some of the older actors, they had a better understanding of the technical process, whereas it seems like a lot of the last maybe 10 years, there's kind of a growing trend of we'll bring in the stand-ins and rehearse with the stand-ins, and we'll get our marks off of that, and the actors, and I don't put it on the actors, because the first AD and the director, they're.
A decision has been made.
The decision is made. It's I don't believe that it's an inconvenience when you ask somebody to do their job.
No.
I think that's part of the deal.
Yeah.
So they don't like to be restricted. I don't want to hit that exact mark. I feel like but I also feel that it's their job to be able to work within the confines of a set and lighting, although in the 70s, it was all pretty much hard light. It was the soft light thing and the wraparound, and
they've got more leeway now.
They've got much more leeway. Much more leeway as far as not getting in an unflattering light, and being out of position as far as because we have sliders and various ways to adjust the camera now, as far as not hitting their marks and overs and blocking another actor's light and not clearing themselves. That's the older actors seem to be more, or understand that this is part of what we have to do in order to make this all work.
Sure.
And because there are time constraints also. You can't, although there are some guys that do 50 takes, but usually when you get into a situation like that where you have a director that likes to do lots and lots of takes, they budget that in. They allow for that. If you have a good first AD, they allow for that.
They figured it out, yeah.
And I think that it's advantageous for the actor to know some technical aspects of what's going on, in front of them too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and one of the things I've talked with a number of people about that I agree with, it's also like from you on the dolly and me on the camera, I think it's also important for us to understand what they have to do, what's going on with them.
Oh, absolutely.
Because at the end of the day, I always think, well, no one's looking at me on camera.
Right.
I'm not the one out there emoting or doing whatever. So I think, again, a lot of it comes down to just understanding what everybody has to do and trying to be. And do you find yourself working a lot with the boom operator as far as like making sure they've got their space or whatever? Or do you let them do their thing and tell you if they need something?
After so many hours on the set, you kind of know where the boom operator wants to be, and you kind of know what's. I always looked at this is a team sport.
Yep.
I always tried to have a really good relationship with the sound with the boom operator, because I look at it. They're usually the ones that struggle.
They're kind of out there on their own. They're like the last, and what do you need?
Right.
Yeah.
So I always would say, hey, do you need to ride the shot? I would offer a seat to,
oh, wow. Yeah.
Or a focus puller, especially in the older days,
sure.
When they were on the dolly, and you offer them a seat because they're on the wheel and
absolutely.
They're by the lens, and sometimes it's just, whether they're working the right or left side, it just makes it easier for them to do their job.
Absolutely,
if they're riding. Yeah. And I looked at the boom operators saying, what can I do?
Yeah.
I can work from this side of the dolly. I can squat down.
Yep.
I can work from this side of the dolly.
Yeah.
What can I do to help you? I think that's part of our job too, is trying to not just the camera operator's job, but there's other things going on the set, especially the boom operator, where they're struggling to get their job done.
It's I always try to, for lack of a better word, like embrace the sound department right from day one, because I don't think it happens that often.
No, it doesn't.
Unfortunately, there's this weird old thing of like camera versus sound, and it's like, well, we're all doing the same. We're not doing the same job, but we're all making the same thing.
Right.
And so right off the bat, I always go, well, what do you know? Oh, I could be on this side if you need me on that side, and they're always sort of shocked by that. And I go, well, why don't most people do this? And I guess a lot of people don't. Maybe that's. It might not be as normal as it used to be. I think it's gotten better a little bit in a weird way. But I always find that, if you do that for anybody, then when you need something, they're going, what do you need? How do you help you with this? So it just comes back to you in spades.
Absolutely. And I've worked on a set where, and for sure I won't mention names here, but where not the operator, but the director of photography literally said, F sound, I don't care about sound. I don't care about what their struggles are.
Yep.
I care about making everything look good.
This is my lighting, and I'm not messing with that.
God.
Yeah, well, and then you're sort of in between, and you're like, oh, God, I can't. I'm going to try to help you as much as I can, but I can only help you so much because, it's like a line's been drawn in the sand, which is...
And this is a really well-renowned DP, but very difficult to work with.
That's too bad. Well, those situations exist, and that's why I think the people who, like yourself, who succeed, part of it is a balancing act and a juggling act of knowing how to work with different people and how to work in these situations. Right.
You have to be flexible and willing to compromise.
Yeah.
I've done a lot of shots. I'm sure you have too, where you go, oh, this is horrible. They'll never use it, right?
Yep.
You look back at the Dolly Grip, and Dolly Grip looks at you, and you go,
why are we even doing
this?
Never
use it.
Yep.
Never.
Yep.
And of course you're right, because you have the experience, and you get to know, they're going to cut from here to here.
Yep.
And,
or the worst part is, of course, you're in the 14th hour and you're doing that, and you're like, we should be going home. Everybody knows this isn't in the movie.
But but we don't. A lot of that is the studio wants a lot of coverage.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
Because they want options when they go into the edit.
Yep. Or they need to give that actor their close-up just because for political reasons or whatever, but that's what happens. Right. It's the game, yeah.
Right.
Well, Moose, thank you so much. This was really great talking to you. I'm bummed that you're retired because it means I'm not going to get to work with you because I've heard so many things about you over the years.
Yeah. Well, I thank you for the invite. It's I hope I've shed a little bit of light on my perspective.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
Coming from the Dolly Grip, crane grip side of things, and the relationship between not just the operator but the focus puller, because I always, like I said, looked at them as kind of the nucleus, the team that
100%.
Everything revolves around, and you kind of work as the team. And it was a great career. I met some really fantastic people and had the opportunity to work with some of the best operators in the film industry, and learned a lot. And
I asked you not to interrupt, but I asked you earlier what you miss about not working. What do you miss?
I miss the camaraderie, the personal aspect of it, because you spend more time on the movie set than you do with your real family, and that becomes your real family, and you form some pretty close bonds, and you meet some really talented individuals in front of the camera and behind the camera that are creative. And one thing that I will say to not just Dolly Grips but to just in general, especially when you're kind of new, whether you're a Dolly Grip or an operator, there's a learning period when you first start, and you're kind of getting things where I'm starting to understand why things happen a certain way and this and that. And you then at one point, maybe 4 or 5 years into it, you think, I got this shit wired. Yeah. I got this shit wired. And then something happens and you figure out, I don't know as much as I thought I could know, I thought I knew.
Let me ask you a question. How long was your career?
Well, I was in the film industry for 47 years.
So am I correct in guessing that in year 46 and 47, there were still occasional moments where you went, oh, okay, I'm learning that. I'm learning
absolutely.
Because I know I still do all the time.
And especially to older Dolly Grips and maybe even camera operators, just because they're young and inexperienced doesn't mean they don't have great ideas.
No question.
So, try not to get set in your ways and be receptive to, because that's how things progress. Is we kind of as the veterans kind of get stuck in a rut. Maybe being receptive to new ideas, I think, is a big part of advancing the whole process. Really, like I said, I thought I knew a lot, and then I realized that I don't know nearly as much as I thought, and that was kind of an eye-opener for me as far as being open and receptive to different ways to doing things.
Wow, that was just a blast talking with Moose. He's such an interesting guy and so amazingly good at what he does. It just makes me sort of frustrated, as I said at the end, that I probably will never have the chance to work with him. But nonetheless, at least we got to learn a little bit from his years of experience. Thanks a lot for listening, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks. Take care.